Now we have a panel discussion on will e-commerce sustain this rapid growth? This discussion will answer your questions like how are e-commerce companies looking at future growth, new strategies to maintain this growth, etc. I would like to invite Mr. Anurag Mathur, partner and leader, Customer Goods and Retail PwC Strategy, to moderate this discussion. It's my pleasure to invite our esteemed panelists for this discussion. Mr. Ambareesh Murty, co-founder and CEO, Pepperfry; Mr. Ajoy H Chawla, CEO, Jewellery Division, Titan Company; Mr. Kapil Makhija, CEO, Unicommerce; Dr. Dhaval, Shah, co-founder, Farm Easy; Mr. Kavindra Mishra, MD and CEO, House of Anita, Dongre. Welcome, everyone. Over to you, Mr. Mathur.
Welcome, everybody. I think we have had a very exciting past 2.5 years, of survival and growth amidst the pandemic, which has changed consumer behavior, our behavior dramatically, and made us reorganize our lives in many ways. As the pandemic unfolded, initially we saw consumers and businesses, struggle to survive, but slowly and surely we started to see them rebuild their lives online. Whether it was social interactions, work, education, entertainment, shopping, everything moved online and at a faster pace than before. The active internet penetration in the country shot up both across the urban as well as the rural landscape. E-commerce emerged as a safe and convenient way to purchase. This, coupled with a strong push by several participants in the e-commerce ecosystem, whether it's with the online retailers, whether it's with the brands, whether it's with the payment gateways, several other service providers, and also incentivization by governments to some extent, has led to consumers getting more and more comfortable in transacting digitally and increasing their shopping expenditure online. From a business standpoint, categories like electronics and fashion, of course, continue to dominate large parts, but wellness and beauty, coupled with grocery, have shown the largest shifts and probably are more sticky in nature as we see them. But while growth has been available across categories, driving market share, building profitability, and finding the cash has been more elusive, leading to pressure on survival for several players and also a flurry of inorganic activity across the e-commerce ecosystem. Now, as we back almost 15, 18 months into the pandemic, we look back at this, and India's slowly getting back to physical interactions and physical spaces. The question remains that will this growth sustain? What we have seen on e-commerce over the last 2.5 years, will we see this pace of growth, and will we see this growth sustain? How will this change? What are the challenges? What have been the drivers? And to debate this, I think I have a very, very interesting and eminent panel with me today. Have folks, leaders from different degrees, different brands, different parts of the industry, who have all had very interesting journeys over these last 18 months, and would love to have a conversation to benefit all of us from their experiences and learnings over this time. So without ado, maybe I can start by putting out a question to each of you, and maybe Ambareesh, I can start with you. You run a multi-brand category platform with looking at home, which was a space that got completely reorganized, rejigged, rethought about, with people suddenly spending all their time in home. Right? So I think the first question for each of you, and maybe starting with you, Ambareesh, is from a consumer standpoint, how have things evolved in the last 15 months? Right? What or who has driven this growth? Is it coming from new consumers? Is it coming from new geographies? Is it just people are shopping much more often? Categories upgrading. So what do you see as the drivers, or what has driven growth in the last 15 months?
So thanks for having me on the panel, Anurag. So just to answer your question, I think we'll have to step back and take a look at, I think, two fundamental trends that have panned out over the last 12 months. The first is that, and you called it out, is people have become really comfortable with e-commerce in general. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that during the lockdowns, even grocery purchases, which are essentials, were required to be bought online. A lot of people bought online, and therefore they got used to it, right? What that's resulted in, and if you look at the typical flow of penetrations in all categories, is you start with basic products, so which is things like electronics, etc. Grocery got a bump up courtesy of the pandemic. That flows through into areas such as fashion. And then because fashion is relatively an unstructured category, that behavior of consumers flows through into furniture and home products, right? And so we see some of that sticky behavior of customers who've adopted e-commerce continue even into furniture and home through the course of the last 15 months. So that's the first trend that's changed. The second one is the fact that, fundamentally we spent a lot more time at home, right? I mean, so if originally, let's say 3 years back, there was that sofa there, which is a little lumpy and we were okay with. Now, considering that we spend a lot of time on that sofa, we're not okay with the lumpiness of that sofa. And therefore, I think just the appreciation of customers in general towards what they have at home and the acceptance of nothing but the best or nothing but everything that should be perfect has increased substantially. And I think that's something that's going to be sticky because it's effectively, you don't make compromises at home anymore because you spend so much time at home, right? That's the second trend. What all of this has done is it's increased the overall demand for, let's say, in our category, furniture and home living products substantially. However, it's been a double-edged sword, right? Because my category inherently is omni-channel in nature, Anurag, and you'd appreciate this. Our thesis has always been that it's the same customer who could be on walking in a mall at some point in time, on a high street, on a laptop, or on a mobile phone. And therefore, it's our duty as a brand to connect with her, whichever way she wants to connect with us. Now, what's happened in the last 15 months is a large aspect of this entire omni-channel connect is gone, right? By virtue of the restrictions that have been placed on retail. And I think that's something which we have to wait and watch as to how that's going to pan out in the future. We are very positive. We think that omni-channel is inherently a nature of customer behavior. And therefore, even if there are restrictions in the short term, in the longer term, as things open up, customers will come back and want to engage in the retail experience online as well as offline. So these are 2 or 3 key trends that I'm seeing. Online is doing well. Omni-channel has had restrictions having an impact on it. However, on the aggregate, I think if businesses have had good processes and sticky consumers, they've done well and they've come through the pandemic quite well.
Get that picture, Ambareesh. I think, and Dr. Dhaval, maybe I could move to you next, right? I mean, the other big shift that we got was a significant desire for consumer health, right? I mean, in all our surveys, I think that we did a significant step up in expenditure on consumer health. The focus on consumer health and wellness was probably unparalleled time like this, and possibly continues. So what were the kind of shifts and drivers that you saw over the last 15 months?
Yeah, so Anurag, I think you couldn't be more accurate. I think the pandemic just took everybody by a storm, and including consumers who never thought that for something as basic as medicines or grocery, I won't be able to step down, and that really hit people. I think people were just surprised that they could not do things that they've been doing since like 20, 30 years. And they were now dependent on somebody. I think the adoption because of this realization went just sky high. Like people were willing to use their smartphones more, download the app, log in, register, etc. In the past, we've had consumers coming to us who like 65% of consumers coming to us who don't have a prescription, or who have a prescription just 10 years old, because the local chemist never asked for a prescription. We insist on a prescription. People used to visit a doctor, get a prescription, and come back to us. I think what we realized in the pandemic, again, this was not possible. So we started connecting these consumers to a network of doctors who were more than willing to do it, because even their clinics were shut. They wanted to go out there and help these consumers, and that really helped. I think our prescription adherence now, I mean, in terms of just availability of a valid prescription, has gone up from a 60-65% people not having it at the first instance to almost 70 to 80% of the consumers and patients coming to us having a prescription, because that's the new norm. People are now more receptive of ways and means of doing of transacting online or doing e-commerce through the new laid out rules. I think that was unheard. We are now getting orders from geographies in the country that, I mean, very honestly, I never knew they even existed. I never knew that such a pin code in this state has a massive population which is actually diabetic. And when you actually reach out to these people, the biggest concern that they have is we have no access. We have no access to getting these products. And generally people in these towns have people living in one of the metros of India, one of their relatives who generally regularly ship them these products or these medicines. Now with us, there is a direct line of sight. So the acceptability, the willingness to try out and to stick to norms which are laid, which are more compliant, which are more the need of the hour, especially in a sector like healthcare, are being accepted. And that's a beautiful sign. I mean, there's hardly anything that I love about the pandemic, but yes, the acceptance of technology is something that I really appreciate how it has just happened.
Very interesting. So you're saying, of course, growth was driven by access, but also consumers removed their own friction points. They got more accepting to do more to remove their friction points.
Correct.
Interesting. So I think, and clearly you were one of the categories that was probably most demand during the pandemic, and consumers were willing to do more. But just expanding that a little bit, did you see more on the wellness and consumer health side was it really more a frantic run for medicines, if I can?
So it started with a frantic run of medicines because everybody just realized that, hey, this is something that I really, really need and I will not get it. Let me just order it now and get it right away. But I think once you get hooked on to doing things the e-commerce way, which is very convenient, you don't have to move a limb, just sit at home, fill rates are through the roof, pricing is quite good. I think it just transcends into other categories like wellness, your OTC products, your shampoos and your conditioners. I mean, which again is a small part of the business, but yes, at the end of the day, the cart value just keeps increasing, which wasn't the case in the past.
Interesting. So you've seen that new access also convert to new value with wellness. Very interesting.
Correct.
Thanks, Dr. Dhaval. Moving from there into, I think, Ajoy, coming to you, where the category was probably, initially, I think, I would say consumption occasions definitely dropped, right? Whether it was marriages, whether it was just social occasions, and therefore ability of consumers to consume jewelry and, apparel, which to some extent, I think fashion as a business took an occasion hit. So how did you see consumers reacting, and how did your e-commerce, were they as excited about transacting online and building up e-commerce, or do you have a different experience?
Yeah, thanks, Anurag. Actually, many people see jewelry and fashion and other discretionary items either as luxury or fashion. But what insight that comes from the category is there are customer needs for festive occasions or for milestones like birthdays and anniversaries or for weddings, or it could be also for smaller things like housewarming and other such occasions. So jewelry buying is in a way connected to occasions. And while the pandemic was there, the occasions continued to exist. So what we saw was a lot of pent-up demand for occasions, and we continue to see it even in post-wave 2. I think that drives the need. The second area that seemed to play in our favor is customers' interest in gold. Last year, more so. And even this year, it continues. It's not higher than last year. It's got slightly more muted, but relatively, the demand for gold coins and bullion, maybe for gifting, maybe for saving. And that has, in a way, these are the two fundamental fuels which have in a way driven customer behavior. The rest of it is coming from what our panelists have also shared, that all of us just getting used to the fact that everything can be done online, including meeting friends over a Zoom, a drink session, or catching up in a panel conversation like this, besides the several commerce opportunities that exist. I think research and discovery online had commenced several years ago. I mean, all of us knew that most of marketing and content creation was driving customers online, and therefore the online influence, if I were to say, if it was 50-50 or 40-60 earlier, it is kind of swung to 80-20 now, because a lot of people are consuming content and therefore the discovery is happening. And coupled with the demand for the need state that I spoke about, and the fact that if you can make it simple for the customer to transact online, or at least make a shortlist and selection online, and then maybe complete the last 10-20% of it offline, that has actually driven for us. So initially during lockdown, of course, it was purely online. And we saw our first experience during Akshaya Tritiya last year, wherein we saw not just the newer and younger and modern customers come, but even the more traditional customers come online. And there, because we were able to assist them in the form of enabling them to kind of get familiar with online commerce, maybe selection, shortlisting. So we actually had our vast sales force, or the retail staff who were sitting at home during the lockdown, assisting them in actually completing a purchase and giving them the confidence that, yes, what you've selected is right, or if there's a problem, I'm here to solve it for you, or if you want to change it, etc. So I think that brought in a lot of existing customers as well as traditional customers who are not usually comfortable coming online. So,
right.
So if you ask me, 2 or 3 things have worked at an overall level. From first, the headline at a virtually less than 1% or less than 0.5% of our total sale coming from what I would call as online, digital plus remote channels, has now climbed from that 0.5% to closer to 10-11%. In fact, in the last few months, it has climbed up to 13-14%. So, and that is equally split between people who are shopping online or completing their purchases offline. So they start their journey online, and then they get what we call as a joint closure happening in the store, because it's higher ticket values tend to go on the store, and lower ticket values below 50,000, people are more comfortable online. The second area is remote, which is to say, why can't I reach out to my repeat customers through a video call, through WhatsApp, through Google My Business, through a direct video call, through an appointment booking, and then leverage endless aisle. So between a video call, cloud-based calling, endless aisle, appointment booking, and perhaps even a try at home, once the unlock happens, what I would categorize all of this as remote shopping. So between remote shopping as a category and digital channels as a category, this has now climbed up to, as I said, 10-11%, and they are equally split.
Right.
So imagine new customers funneling in through the online piece, through the website, through the app, and then the journey goes on through live assists. And the stores, on the other hand, directly reaching out to their repeat customers, some of them dormant, some of them active, and then drawing them through a remote purchase experience. So put together, that has driven the business. And if I were to summarize what has worked in both these funnels, is making it as frictionless as possible, making it as engaging as possible. So as far as possible, at least in our category, having a live person interact with them, either on a chat mode or on a video mode, or sometimes in a collaborative mode, between the online central team, a store person, and the customer. It's a 3-way conversation going on, and best fulfilling their need in what is the most convenient manner to the customer. So these are the 3-4 things which have really worked. Of course, there are features in it, whether it is virtual try-ons or whether it is remote payment and so on and so forth. But those are features.
Got
The
it.
essential idea is making it as frictionless as possible.
That's
And I think it's here to stay because it's a growing piece. I'm seeing it grow month on month, quarter on quarter, sequential growths.
excellent. I think so very interesting. So you're saying that the omni-channel or multi-channel way of being, making that more frictionless, was definitely drove consumers back in. And also interestingly, you're saying that while consumption occasions or usage occasions may have dried to some extent, purchase occasions stuck. Right. So whether it's weddings, whether it's festivals, whether it's the others, and interesting. Just taking that thought and moving to Kavindra, right? Because from a fashion standpoint, I would say both consumption and purchase occasions dried up a fair bit. So how did your business react to this, and what is the shift that you saw over the last 15 months?
Thanks, Anurag, for having me here. But I think first of all, Ajay, I loved that when you said 50,000 rupees is low ticket. I mean, if we do 50,000 rupees a ticket, we all celebrate that. So I think you learn every day. Today I've learned 50,000 is low ticket. But coming back to your query, yes, so it has been a little bit of a challenge, right, for our category as a whole. So if I look at overall numbers, yes, I don't think because our category is such that a lot of business used to happen through, especially the fresh and the full price business used to happen through the stores, right? For a brand like us or a company like us, which has got marquee brands in each of the categories, and we have more than 600 points of sale for each of the brands. So that is that was it. And e-commerce used to be a very small percentage of business, around 8 to 10% at when pre-pandemic, right? Which has now grown up to around 35%. Some of that growth obviously is coming through because the stores are shut, so the opportunity to sell is little limited, or it's very disruptive right now. But I think the good thing is that as other panelists have said, the growth is sequential, is happening month on month. And I think the good part is that unlike the previous times when a lot of fashion companies used to use online more like a channel where you are clearing up inventory, right? Because a lot of aggregators, you were doing a lot of that stuff. I think things have moved from there. So, for example, the contribution of fresh price business, like for example, we are right now selling a lot of three-piece suits in Global DC, which are 6299 worth bucks full price. I'm really amazed because I never thought that we would be selling that. Obviously, 50,000 is a different benchmark, but to sell that 6299, 7,000, very expensive merchandise, full price, something which the customers are only, and the return rates are very, very, very low. So I think the whole consumer mindset has changed now. She's very comfortable with the idea of buying. And I think that's a big victory for our categories as a whole and for brands like us, because we used to have around 65-70% of our customer base is loyal customers. They used to come and buy every time, right? Now for that customer to actually feel comfortable and buy online, I think the whole game has only shifted. So in terms of our omni-channel contribution, so I think Ambeesh was talking about that omni-channel is a little bit of a stress because the stores are disrupted. But in our case, for example, we were very nascent. Like when pre-pandemic, we were like very, very small in that play, and we used to have about 2-3% of contribution of omni-channel in our business. In our stores currently, it has gone up to as high as 14-15%. And the good thing is when you do omni-channel, you are connecting with a lot of your regular consumers, so you're also selling a lot of fresh merchandise. So I think the key for us is that the business is being driven, obviously, and especially in our stores or through our own website, it is being driven through the omni play, which I think is a very, very significant step and which is going to be there, I think, and going to get consolidated month on month, year on year. So I think that's a very stable growth. Obviously, in terms of aggregators, because a lot of our consumers in tier 2, tier 3, where we are not available through the omni play, I think that is where you are still selling a lot of that merchandise. So a lot of growth is coming from there. But I think the biggest learning and the positive take for the industry as a whole, and if you ask us as an organization, is an ability to sell full price to your end consumer without discounting. And I think the consumer acceptance of this, because we are primarily into women's wear, which actually women like to go out and shop, from there to being able to sell it through online, through omni play. I think that's a very, very significant and important step for us.
Very interesting. And when you say omni and 14-15% contribution, this is really you're talking about consumers who step into more than one channel, who interact with you on more than one kind of channel, or they could be just.
So, for example, if I look at say if 100 is my store sale, we are now experiencing months where we are doing $15 of sale in the store coming through the Omni Play, which I think is very, very strong because our store bases are significant.
Understand. Very interesting. And I think, also in your category, more than any of the others, I think the interaction or question becomes that is the growth over the last period, has it been really being driven by the brand and brand.coms, or is it driven by the marketplaces? And where do you see that, right? Is it happening for both? Is it happening for?
It's happening for both. It's happening for both. What's happening is that we tend to have very specific, collections which are there only on our website, like which are we do a lot of edits which are only for brand.coms. So a lot of that growth is driven through there. And so for example, we are now as an Omni Play with the Mintras of the world, also with all the aggregators also. So that piece is also growing. So I think the growth is overall happening through the Omni Play for aggregators as well as Omni Play for our own this thing. And overall also
we are driving exclusivity on brand.com to make sure that remains.
The consumer expense is being driven through that, and the overall business is being driven through the aggregators.
So Kapil, you see each of these categories, right? You power the back end, you look at each, and you looked at all sorts of both brand.coms, marketplaces, pieces. So what have you made of the growth over the last 15 odd years? Is it 15 odd months? Is it?
First of all, thanks for having me here, Anurag. And it's always encouraging to hear our customers talk about how online has impacted their lives. It's always feels good to be a part of that journey. And some of them are on the panel as well. So what we've seen is that you talked about different trends, and all the panelists have touched upon different trends for different categories. What we've fundamentally seen is 2 or 3 key trends in the overall ecosystem. As you rightly pointed out, since we're getting to 20% of India's e-commerce volume, we have a fair share of what's happening in the ecosystem. One is, as Dhaval mentioned, newer pin codes being accessed. So we are seeing a significant amount of growth in the tier 2, tier 3 towns. In fact, they have grown over the last 1 year, 90% plus, and significantly higher than the tier 1 towns. And their relative share to the overall volumes has increased by 10-12% in just a span of 12 to 15 months. The second trend we are seeing is emergence of new categories. So besides pharma, we are also seeing a higher share in FMCG, personal care. FMCG has grown again 90% plus, primarily driven by D2C brands, and even personal care has grown by about 50% year on year. And like everyone touched upon, a lot of it is driving a fundamental shift is driven by fundamental shift in consumer buying behavior. The third trend we are seeing is growth of brand.com versus marketplaces that we talked about. We are seeing 3 times more growth on brand.com compared to marketplaces. Of course, marketplaces still have the lion's share, but brand.com is increasing significantly. And there we are seeing higher basket sizes also, by the way. So we see about twice the basket size, and average order size is twice that of an average order size in marketplaces. So brands are actually driving higher consumptions through their website. So their volumes are growing, they've got a higher average order value on their brand.com. And also, as Kavindra mentioned, a lot of these brands are actually going omni-channels, particularly in the fashion sector. We are seeing now, on an average, 25% of omni-channel orders are getting dispatched through the stores. So that's a healthy trend that we have seen. And finally, what we're also seeing is, particularly in FMCG cases, that brands are striving for selling higher pack sizes. So some of the SKUs that are selling in offline, they're not selling online, like smaller sachets, etc., because they also want to maintain their unit economics, particularly in FMCG. So they're pushing for higher pack sizes there, like a 5 kg surf or a 5-liter Lysol bottle, some things like those, versus, let's say, smaller pack sizes. That's another trend that we've seen across.
Thanks for that. So I think there are clearly some very interesting themes that are emerging from conversations, right? Omni as a way of life, both a frictionless experience for customers. I hear much more of that. So consumers wanting, better availability, faster availability, a more seamless experience. That seems to be big thoughts that you're all echoing. I think if so, as we look at these themes extending forward. I think the question next is really, will this growth sustain, right? Will we see this over the next 1 to 2 years? Will we continue to see this strong growth trend on e-commerce that we have, or will it, taper down? And what are some of these drivers that have worked well over the last 15 months, and you see them driving or sustaining the growth? I mean, has it been still more driven really by price offs and discounts, or has it been more, faster deliveries, greater availability, the seamless, frictionless experience that you talked about, or others that have been really powering this growth? And and whether you believe that will sustain this forward. Any of you could pick this first if you want, but maybe Ambareesh itself. I mean, start say, how do you see this sustaining, and what are the big drivers that you see? This.
So, Anurag, I actually don't think that the growth over the last 15 months has happened courtesy price of service. I think a lot of panelists, Kavindra perhaps also alluded to it, saying that the fact that consumers are willing to buy full price is one of the things that has emerged through the course of the last 15 months. So I don't think pricing or discounting is the only is the driver behind this growth. Here's my thesis on how, and a lot of it applies to my category. It also applies to other businesses, other business segments. My thesis is that a large component of the growth has come from the unorganized sector coming online onto marketplaces. Right now, there was a period of time, a large component of the last 15-month period was times when the unorganized sector, especially in the offline world, just couldn't operate. Right. And therefore, at that point in time, their only method of reaching out to customers was through the medium of online. So therefore, this large-scale emergence of the unorganized sector onto online channels is one of the key things which drove variety, selection, consequently, and drove growth for online overall, and also drove growth for the unorganized segment because they were gaining from the benefit of reaching out to customers online. Getting me?
Right.
So, now, will this stick? Things will. So here's my thesis. My thesis is over the next couple of years, there will be occasional, let's say, situations where we will all have to be further careful. There could be further waves. We all have to prep for it. However, I think with increasing vaccination, etc., the world will come back to a version of the normal over the next couple of years. I'm saying a version of the normal. I think there are some fundamental changes which are here to stay. Potentially, one of them is video call meetings, and so these things will continue. However, the a version of the normal will come back. Right? When it does, you will find small businesses needing to make the trade-off as to whether they want to continue to focus online, or will they start now serving their customers offline. You getting me? So I think if that trade-off is enabled through technology, which is the stuff like what Kapil does, right? If that trade-off is enabled through technology in a seamless manner, then there is no reason why the growth should not stick, right? The second aspect of, because the unorganized sector is going to continue to remain online, is going to continue to serve its customers in the offline world, is going to do both of that through technology, which makes it seamless. And so therefore that growth, that is an increase in business for everybody. And when there's an increase in business, that growth should stay. Right? The one thing that I think is going to be a fundamental shift, and something that we realized early in the pandemic, in the first version of the pandemic. So let's say April, March last year, right? The one thing we will need to do is blur the lines between online and offline. And if you succeed in blurring the lines between online and offline, and I'm using the term slightly loosely, but blurring could mean frictionless. The blurring could mean the starting point itself becomes so seamless, whether the customer is online or the customer is offline, that it doesn't make any difference to the customer as to where they start their journey. Getting me? So if you blurring the lines between online and offline using technology, I think is going to be something that we'll all have to do really well in order to ensure that not only do we make this growth stick, but we also add oodles of growth on top of it over the next 2-3 years. Getting me? Now, examples of this, if you have a mobile phone and you were to come out of Pepperfry and you knock on a piece of furniture on it, I should be able to give you haptic feedback which tells you exactly what the wood feels like. Then you don't need to go to an offline store. Getting me? So that's the level of blurring. And I think, and technologies exist today to make that happen. It's a question of how we implement them in a manner which is easy for the customer to interact with, basically get the
Right.
UI UX right. And you will succeed in blurring these lines. And then the world is, so to speak, everybody's oyster, right? Because then there is no difference between online and offline. It's already started to happen. People's education, for example, has been happening virtually for the last couple of years, or last year and a half. So I think it's a reality which we all need to tailor our businesses to. And the technology exists which allows us to tailor our businesses accordingly. That's one of the areas, for example, that we are investing heavily behind in the course of the last 6 odd months.
Understand. That's very encouraging, Amrish. I think I hear you, and I think at the end of the day, even after this, we are at 7-8% penetration overall retail, growing fast. There is a large market. India probably holds longest promise to the world for retail. So no doubt. I think just to follow up on that though, which is that in terms of, and like you say, the unorganized to organized shift is a big driver in building through. But growth's not been as democratic, right? I mean, it's just making business sustain or making it profitably work for a lot of these players who are coming onto your platforms, right, or other platforms. Will they be able to sustain? And do you see this being democratic? And will they be able to, while from a consumer standpoint, it will stick? Or do you see some of them being able to sustain, some being sort of getting run over in the process?
Okay, so Anurag, we economics has to play out for all businesses. That's the reality of life, right? So if a small business is well run, it has a product which matters to the consumer and has a distinct, reason for the consumer to buy, there is absolutely no reason why that business should not thrive, why that business should not do well, because the customer demand for that is going to continue, right? That said, if you're inherently in a business where you're willing to lose money in order to basically get customers, then in a time such as this, there are only two options open to you. One is get really big, really fast, okay,
Right.
which will allow you to sustain and thrive, or shut shop. I mean, frankly, if you ask me, one of the things that I noticed over the last 15 months is big brands got bigger and small brands got smaller. I think Kapil was alluding to it in his explanation of how various D2C brands came up. And this void between the big brands and the small brands started getting filled up with new entrants, D2C brands, etc. And I think that's fundamentally because small brands, big brands had the ability to grow really fast and therefore had balance sheets which would allow them to sustain that growth. And smaller brands which did have the ability to grow really fast basically shut down. I mean, and it's a very clear choice, right, for a business. And I also think that customer choice is fragmenting across the board, which is why D2C brands are coming up and to fill the void between the big and the really small. You getting me? That's the
Got it.
So a combination of these two, I think if you get it right, I mean, your business is going to thrive.
And consumers able to express himself much more clearly. So you find newer opportunities which can be plugged.
Yeah, and if you're not building a great business, it actually doesn't matter whether you're online or you're offline. I mean, you're not building a great business.
The fundamental value proposition has survived. Excellent. So let me get in some of the other panelists on this and get their views. Dr. Dhaval, I mean, you see it sticking. You also see it's not price and discount driven. It's driven by a lot of some of the other fundamentals. And will it stick?
See, the entire consumer thesis in the country has been built on the fact that Indians beyond a point will develop affinity to brands and to practices that they've never shown in the past. I think that's the fundamental thesis of each and every single business that is evolving right now, including ours, including Amazon and the Flipkart of the world. I think as Indians, I don't think we are married to a particular concept or a particular way of operating as a consumer. But I think that will change beyond a point. So, for example, not me, but my family now is a complete, say, Amazon consumer, and we were just incidentally going through our purchase history. I think we have some 75 to 80 orders in the last 4 months. Which is unheard. And the family, including my parents, have stopped looking at pricing on any other platform. It's just Amazon. I think that takes time. That's more evolution of a journey in every consumer market that you think about. And I don't think India is any different. Just that the affinity or ability to get hold of coupons or get hold of better offers in Indians is much more than anywhere globally, and that's where the stickiness will come at some point of time. But I think it goes without saying, as Indians, we value service. I think service has always been something that Indians love, right? Because of just the abundant manpower that we have. We Indians are used to getting brilliant service over any other country in the world. And I think that's the very fact that we feel that consumers will stick onto a service which offers great value as in terms of pricing, etc. Plus, there is a good layer of service on top. The maximum complaints that consumer businesses in India get, and I'm sure Ambareesh gets them as well as other consumer brands, is, oh, your delivery boy asked me to come down from my house and collect the parcel from the security guard, right? I mean, maybe for furniture less, for consumers like ours, people just don't want to move. We are just so used to service levels. I think that's the stickiness that will drive, because one bad experience wherein the consumer is like, "Arey, wo company wala to road pe bulata hai, it doesn't come up." Whereas in the West, I think nobody is used to doing any of this. I mean, you might even have to drive around to 2 different pin codes and pick up your parcel from a common delivery location. This is what will make consumers stick. And that's what consumers, brands in India need to work upon. And that's where, we are firm believers in full stack. So right from the delivery experience to the warehousing to the, we just don't do manufacturing and we do everything else. If new age brands are able to do that, I don't see any reason for the demand to die down for consumers to move on to other avenues.
But let me ask you, Dhaval, then, does the price equation work? Does the price service equation work from a profitability, from a sustaining value standpoint for like you said, the full stack service? The older players don't necessarily go there, or I can call them the old world players, don't necessarily, because they see their profitability is sticking back significantly. So do you see that this being sustainable, this price value equation?
See, it's all a coming of age, right? So for example, for every single order that we deliver now, we make money. I mean, not at a head office level, but on a contribution basis. I think that's true for almost everybody on this forum. I don't think, I'm sure Ajoy or Kavindra have never lost money on any order delivered till today. But I think, and I'm sure Ambareesh as well now, with I think almost whatever you deliver on a per unit basis, you make money. I think, it's a coming of age thing. I don't think it is Anurag, a question of whether we would ever want to. I think it's more of a call of whether we want to make money today. See, in our case, I think the objective in the first 3 to 4 years was not to make money in the first, because people were just not used to buying. I mean, if I would have told people, "Arey, I'll give you 5% discount, buy from me," people would be like, "Boss, I mean, why do I go online, download, register, get a prescription, place an order, confirm, coordinate with the delivery boy, and get delivery in next day, versus just call the local chemist and he might not give me 5%, he might give me whatever 2%, 3%. I don't care." I think changing habits is tough, but once you change those habits, I don't think it's very difficult to then keep ensuring that the consumer keeps coming back. I mean, I would be surprised if it doesn't work in India, but it does work elsewhere.
Got it. No, that's encouraging. Unit based it works. Habits we've seen changing. We've seen it with several categories. Correct. So definitely, I mean, there is, and we've seen it across, some of the tougher other consumer markets in the world, which are as so clearly. Thanks, Dr. Dhaval. Ajoy, I think looking at you, I think from a unit economic standpoint, at 50,000 low ticket size, hopefully that's not a problem, right? So the question really is, I mean, do you see this sticking, and what are some of the drivers? Some of the frictionless experience that you spoke about, what will be some of the drivers that you see that will make more of this, more the omni-channel, more the online grow and stick? And also maybe a second piece around, do you see brand loyalty or brand stickiness growing in this part and phase?
A couple of observations or insights I can share. Firstly, I think this whole price and discount related issue became the leading conversation in online because the kind of customer who was coming online was perhaps a younger, maybe more price sensitive, limited discretionary spends kind of a person, and quite savvy at kind of figuring out where am I getting the best price, especially when you look at mobiles or you look at, some of the key categories which have driven this. And that then has become a all-pervading, thereafter a self-fulfilling prophecy by marketplace players or brands kind of riding on the same. So it became a general thing. This time around, what we are seeing is that the ticket sizes are double of that. Say, typically we used to see ticket sizes of 17, 18,000 on, and I'm talking now about the pure online, leave aside the joint ones. That itself has more than doubled, 2 to 2.5 times. So 35 to 40,000 average ticket size for an online. And when we saw that the customer profile, so essentially it is a different customer who has made a channel shift. And this customer may not be price sensitive. This customer, as Dhaval talked about, is very service sensitive. This customer is seeking more variety. This customer is looking at a lot more assistance in whatever they do, and is also wanting a less hassle, a hassle-free experience all through. This person does not want to talk to a chatbot because their clarifications may not get addressed fully, etc., etc. So we have to adapt to a different customer profile. And if we continue to serve those customers well, I also see them sticking, at least a good proportion of them sticking, maybe not for all their needs, but at least some of their needs. Okay, they may, when they have a different need, which is maybe either a higher ticket size or they want to discover a lot more physically, then sure, they will go back to offline, especially when it is safe. Safety is also an important consideration, and I think Ambareesh kind of touched upon it over the next couple of years. Safety and how it plays out in customers' mind. So we are seeing, for example, in Zoya, which is a luxury brand, where the ticket sizes are around 4 or 5 lakhs. I mean, for jewelry, 4 or 5 lakhs is not big, by the way. But there also customers prefer online or remote because they are more worried about their safety. They are saying, can you, they are surprised and delighted that we can actually take stuff home to their house, show it to them. So virtually a try at home kind of scenario. So in a very different segment also, and there again, it's the discounting need or not is not very different between online and offline. Okay, that's dependent on the competitive situation, or let's say the tendency of the customer to seek some value. That is always going to be there. The other area that I am seeing is what we as brands and players are also doing, because we are seeing this as an important driver. We are all kind of investing a lot more on this. We are also driving it aggressively. We are also training all our offline staff to become much more omni in their approach. They are also dealing with customers remotely in a very, and now the entire, imagine the Tanishq ecosystem of 8,500 store staff who are otherwise used to building a very deep personal connect physically, are now leveraging these skills to kind of develop a deep connect even remotely with new customers, etc. That whole ecosystem then as an engine beginning to kind of turn the flywheel builds a momentum of its own. And that, the investments from the center and driven initiatives, as well as new features to make it frictionless, etc., next day delivery, reaching out to zip codes, all of those put together is building a momentum of its own. So I see this sticking and growing, not just sticking. I think it will grow. I'm from a 10, 11, 12% that we are seeing right now. I see this becoming closer to 20% over the next 1 year or so. And then once it hits that threshold, there'll be a set of people who will always come. The other piece I'm seeing is newer online customers. So we get about it is, many people are surprised, when even I was surprised when I first discovered it. We get about 2.5 million unique visitors on our website every month for a brand like Tanishq, which is, a jewelry. Obviously it's for discovery and queries of all kinds, etc. But as we get better and better at converting this, from a 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.5%, as we are becoming better at it, this even if this 2.5 million doesn't grow, the opportunity to grow the size of that funnel and recruit new customers into our system. And some of them, we see that, let's say, out of the 100 people who come new onto the website, about 25% of them come back and buy within a year if we have done a good job with them. Okay.
Right.
And the remaining, actually, maybe about 30-35% may not buy that year. They may buy the next year, or we don't know. We will discover it a little better as we go along. And there's another bulk, which is another 30-35% who actually come and buy offline. They come in the second time there because their ticket size or their need state might have been different, or they have discovered now that I can do the same thing sitting in my neighborhood, because we are also expanding physical stores. They are coming offline. So this funnel of attracting the new and then migrating them onto offline is another driver, which I think is working well for us and is likely to be very collaborative. As we keep expanding into, let's say, many parts of Middle India, tier 2, tier 3 towns. We are now present in 215 towns, and I'm sure over the next 2-3 years, we will reach out to 300 towns. And then the Omni thing works even better. So, it's a common piece. I want to make a final observation on this online versus offline. See, I think there will be a set of people who enjoy the shopping experience offline. That is not going to go away because there is a browsing delight. I'll give you my example. If I go to a Simply Namdari store in Bangalore, I discover so many more brands and so many more exciting things there. And, I spend that much more time, as opposed to when I go online, I'm going for a need. I complete my transaction. I might see a few other things here and there, but it's very transaction driven. There is not much pleasure in, let's say, shopping and browsing online. Whereas when I go to a store, or when somebody else comes to our Tanishq store, they'll spend some time, they'll have that coffee, they will interact with the customer. I think there is a certain entertainment involved in shopping, which will not go away. And I would therefore think that certain categories will continue to see people seeking real experiences in the real world, with real touch and feel products, and interacting with the product, interacting with the person, experiencing the hospitality. I think as a social exercise, as a social event, shopping will continue to play an important role for us. But India is so big that each segment is big enough to create its own sustainable growth. The opportunity for growth is, there is no, one will eat into the other. I think both can grow independently, given where we are as a country, given our the buying power of the population growing, and given the underpenetrated nature of many of these, especially the e-commerce channel. Got it.
That's very encouraging. I think you're saying is there will be growth abound across. I think there is new customers. There is it will last both on the online and the offline side, and there is a newer breed of customer who's not as sensitive to pricing. And Kavindra, would you like to come in here in terms of,
Anurag, I'll just add another piece. So, an important piece in jewelry shopping is for wedding purchase. Now, wedding purchase happens with 4, 5, 6 people as a group coming in and spending 2 to 3 hours in a store, and then committing, and they may come multiple times over a few days also and a few weeks. And they may commit to spend from something as low as 2 to 3 lakhs to 20 to 25 lakhs. Obviously, that kind of shopping is not going to go away very easily to online. It will have to be offline. And, and then what you do there will determine also how they come back to you later. So many things interplay with each other that, I just wanted to bring to light that some things will fundamentally remain offline, but which is fine because it's not easy. They can look at the entire team of 5 people sitting on a smart TV saw an entire remote shopping experiences and shortlisted their products. But finally they came in to this. They spent 2 hours, by the way, on that experience. But the last half an hour was spent by the bride and the father of the bride to come try out the product, finally the shortlisted ones, which their family had shortlisted. So it's a very interesting combination. So it will depend on how brands are able to create and imagine this world around people. And I think brands are getting very good at it. And so also besides marketplace place. Sorry, I took
along with the new normal, there is going to be a new reality that the brands have to fix themselves. Yeah. Any first from you, because apparel is that way notorious from a price, full price discount price standpoint. There is a huge stickiness for discounts. Do you see that still continuing and building, or do you see a new class of customer coming online and sticking to brands much more?
Anurag, last year when around I think June we decided that, and I think Ambareesh touched upon it, that I think somewhere they also figured out at the very early stage of the pandemic that things have to change, right? So in June last year, we decided as a team that what we had planned for the next 5 years, which we have to do it now. The acceleration of the whole omni play has to happen now, and you need to actually have a real omni-channel experience and not something which a lot of people do through various APIs, but it's not. So how to get a single view of customer is the most important thing, because only if you have that would you be able to reach out to him and personalize the shopping experience. So we are into a very big digital transformation now as we speak, and I think maybe in a couple of months time or 3 months time we'll be on a Salesforce platform where our front end, back end, our POS, everybody talks with each other. So there is a real inventory situation. There is a real, understanding of the consumer. If she's coming to our website, what is she looking at? If she's going to the store, what she is going. So I think fundamentally, if you have to make a difference, and if this whole growth which has come through in certain cases just by it has happened because the forces of nature are very strong. But if you have to sustain and grow upon it, I think every organization has to invest in technology in a way to understand the consumer with one single view. So we took that call last year, I think in the process of the implementation now. So I think that's one big thing. So the consumers, as I think Ajoy was saying, it's not offline, online. Consumers shop, like all of us shop the way we want to shop, right? Whatever makes comfortable. But as a brand, how do you reach out to them? So I think that is the important thing. And how do you take these observations and personalize the shopping experience? Because in our business, if you go to a store, there's a store staff. She will advise you that this is what is looking good on you. And as I said, around 70% of our consumers are loyal customers, right? So we know their behavior. But if the same person comes to online, and if we don't capture that customer in that same spirit, her shopping experience is broken. So I think that is the solution which we are looking at. And so for me, the growth obviously will be driven through the tech part of it. Second, we personally believe that brand.coms, you need to have products which are exclusive on those. So I think we are continuously building on lines only for a brand.com, like the way we would initially do launches on EBOs. We now consider in certain ways, we now consider our own .coms even more important. So how you play the product play better, because the moment you start playing the product play, the moment you start playing the personalization play, pricing doesn't matter. Because see, हमारा business कैसा है? हमारा business is about aspiration. It's not a product. It's not something which, it's not a FMCG that you pay 10% lower price and buy. It is something which is, if you like the product, you will buy. If you don't like the product, you will not buy. So I think working out product lines only for our brand.com, working on technology to ensure that the omni-channel plays actually in the real sense, to ensure that your marketing and CRM for offline and online customers is same, is what we are banking on. And we believe very strongly that we will drive. Also, I think what has happened is that because of the Instagram, or in our case, Instagram and Facebook being so important, what we are able to do is we are able to now drive sales through that. So in this pandemic, we have launched 2 brands. Now, I've been into this business for the last 22 years. I never thought in my life that I will launch brands without even putting one hoarding. Like, I had never thought about it, without doing a TV, because it's something which I have never even thought, as when I started with Madura or Cadbury's, when we launched Cadbury's 5-star in Delhi, we actually going to each shop and placing the product. Or when I was launching in Madura, we did a TVC. We had no idea, but we just did on our Instagram. And the moment you put something on Instagram, if the story is powerful, the consumer is going there, she's clicking that, going to the website and shopping. So I think the whole way you reach to the customer. So all these are newer customers who are coming and shopping with us. So I think for us, this whole story of ability to, and especially in our category, if you are able to sell stories to the consumer and you reach out to her exclusively, like it's a personalized story, I think that has got far more predominance over selling on discount. And I think that's what we are banking on. We are working on a tech piece to ensure that everything is seamless. And as long as you're in that space, I think this is a story which will keep on growing. Our offline is doing well. In fact, except Maharashtra, where obviously everything is shut, the stores, the recovery in the offline stores is fantastic, and the online piece is also doing well. So I think it's a good place to be.
Very interesting. So you're saying that even from a profitability standpoint, as you grow the brand.com with more exclusive lines, as you leverage social assets across both online, offline, and leverage them to sell as well, and leverage your technology across, even from a profitability standpoint, you see that you can come to similar levels or better.
Post-pandemic, post the first wave, and now even this year, our contribution of the fresh merchandise to our .com the contribution has grown by 2x.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Consumers are shopping fresh. Yeah.
Right. Excellent. Great. Thanks, Kavindra. So, Kapil, I think question to you again. You've seen multiple categories, multiple businesses. What do you think are the triggers that will sustain? Right? Will the growth sustain, and what are some of the best pieces that you are seeing that will make these triggers sustain?
And so I think I agree with all the panelists that I think it is e-commerce is slowly evolving from, let's say, discount-led shopping to experience-led shopping. I think what will drive stickiness is to ensure that you take care of customer experience, because of plus wider product assortment, because of which a lot of D2C brands have come in. There are 800 plus funded D2C brands today in various categories, FMCG, personal care, etc. But fundamentally, what will ensure sustainability for a business and ensure a seamless experience for customers is to invest in the supply chain, is what we've seen. For example, what we've seen is that if a delivery is delayed by a day, the chances of an RTO increases by 3x. And interestingly, none of the panelists, there was very little focus on returns. We've seen a lot of focus on returns actually. Brands are focusing on ensuring that first, the consumer doesn't have to return as much. And secondly, if the return process is very seamless. So that's why they're investing in technology, as Kavindra mentioned, to make sure that the entire experience becomes seamless. They are able to, let's say, get alerts on these orders are potentially going to be returned. Like there's a high RTO frequency from these regions. So that's an alert. So you call up the customer to confirm. Or once the return comes in, you are able to do quality check process very seamlessly and put it back. And in fashion particularly, we have definitely seen, like earlier, online was meant for only old season merchandise. But we have now seen increasing penetration, not just the luxury brand, but even for regular brands or fast fashion brands also. We are seeing much more new season merchandise coming on online, primarily driven by brand.com and omnichannel flavors that we've seen.
Got it. Great. Thanks. I think thank you, everybody. I think it has been interesting talking to each of you, and I think clearly as a saying, this is not something that we saw as a sort of flash in the pan. It is something that will sustain. There is a genuine shift in habits, and there is definitely a new normal that we'll have to think about and build back for, both from a standpoint of driving an omni-channel experience that is different from before. It is definitely going to become a way of life, but also new journeys will be formed, and how brands respond to that, sticking with their proposition, that's going to be driver. There is more to discounts. I think the price service value equation that we've spoken about will create the ability to create and sustain profits, whether it's through exclusivity, whether it's through leveraging technology. So I think there is clearly a strong way forward with this that will build through. So thanks very much. Ajoy, you want to make
I wanted to say, going forward, one thing which at least we are seeing both in CaratLane as well as, more in CaratLane and now also in Tanishq, is that an integrated approach to the way marketing is done. So you may do completely online or 80% online, but you have to keep in mind online, offline journeys of the customer. Similarly, retail, or even let's say customer acquisition and go to market. Kavindra talked about launching a brand, or it could be about simply managing leads, whether on a CRM platform like Salesforce or something else. So I think what I'm seeing is a need for an integrated approach and I think the same is true for marketing. We used to have a separate digital marketing team, and then the rest of the ATL marketing, and then a third BTL team. Now it is ATL plus digital is one. Every campaign is digital. So
great. No, thanks, Joy. I think thanks for those quotes. I think is very interesting. And in the interest of time, we'll close here. Thank you everyone again for being part of this very exciting panel. I think it's a very interesting topic we can continue to discuss. We'll stop here, but again, thank you everybody for being part of this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for sharing your point of view and for the detailed answers. Indeed, a very informative session. Now we'll move ahead to the next session. Stay tuned.